Hi everyone, and welcome to Inside the Summit, the official podcast from AI on Us, the international summit on responsible AI held in October with the support of the French Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs. Today we are traveling to Berlin to meet with Alissa Chmiel. Hi Alissa.
Hi.
Alissa is a researcher, an activist, and founder of Digital Peace to discuss how digital resilience, emotional warfare, and AI governance are becoming intertwined. Alissa joins us today as an international fellow at the Democratic Resilience Center, where she works at the intersection of democracy, cognitive warfare, and emotional resilience. She's not just here to answer our questions, she'll be asking a few of her own later on.
Yeah.
Before we dive in, could you briefly introduce yourself and tell us what drives your work?
Thank you, and hi everybody. I'm Alissa, the co-founder of Digital Peace, a research and advocacy initiative exploring how digitalization impacts global peace and social structure. And I'm also an international fellow at the Democratic Resilience Center, where I'm examining how emotional and cognitive resilience can be understood as core pillars of democratic resilience in the 21st century. What drives me is that I am an early internet child. I grew up witnessing both the incredible potential of emerging technologies to connect and empower us, as well as the slow erosion of that promise. So I genuinely believe that technology holds the potential to help us build more inclusive, peaceful, and democratic societies, but I'm not convinced we're currently walking that path. So my work is trying to bridge that gap, understanding what's going wrong and helping to create the awareness, skills, and structures we need in order to make digital spaces work for society and not against it.
Thank you, Alissa, for this introduction, and congratulations on your work. So let's get started. You often talk about emotional resilience in the age of AI and information warfare, right? How does that translate into practical action for institutions or citizens facing digital overwhelm and disinformation?
Thanks for that thoughtful cue, Marianne. And yes, I do talk a lot about emotional resilience and recently even more about cognitive resilience. So very simply put, emotional resilience is our capacity to regulate emotions in the face of manipulation, to stay grounded, reflective, and calm even when the content is designed to provoke. And this capacity is extremely important in the face of information warfare strategies such as disinformation or emotional manipulation. For me personally, it is even more important than debunking fake news, especially because in the last few years, we've been seeing a more sophisticated form of manipulation that we call cognitive warfare. Briefly, cognitive warfare refers to attempts to shape how we think, by influencing our interpretation patterns, our values, even our sense of reality. A prominent example of this is how during election cycles, actors may flood social media with conflicting narratives, not to persuade, but to confuse and paralyze public judgment, making people question what's real or whom to trust. And of course, AI plays a central role in cognitive warfare, not just by the dissemination of misinformation, but also by gradually changing what people see as true, who they trust, and how they understand the world around them. And on top of that, we see a growing trend of cognitive offloading. We're increasingly outsourcing our thinking to machines and algorithms. Google gives us our answers, social media tells us what matters, AI writes our emails, and bit by bit, we're losing the habit of deep thinking, of sitting with complexity, and of forming our own judgments. So both emotional and cognitive resilience have become more than just personal strength. They have become civic imperatives and essential skills for safeguarding democracy in the digital age. But how does that translate into tangible action? Well, for institutions, the key is shifting from warning people to actually empowering them. Instead of just saying, don't believe misinformation, we need to teach people how to recognize when they're being emotionally manipulated. That's the real skill we're missing. And for citizens, well, the answers might sound simple, but they're powerful when practiced. One of the most important starting points is to train yourself to observe your emotions. I remember one time I was logging off Twitter and I felt so angry. And then I was realizing, well, this emotion isn't mine. It came from the timeline. And that moment of noticing is key. So ask yourself, why am I feeling this and who benefits from the outrage? Another habit worth cultivating is managing our emotional household. Like our time, our money, our emotional energy isn't infinite, and we might want to become more intentional about how we spend it. Do I really want to waste it on being angry about a politician's latest tweet? Or maybe do I want to save it for showing up for my children after school? And cognitive resilience similarly begins with recognizing cognitive overwhelm. Recently, I spoke to many people across sectors that were voicing quite mental fatigue, the sense that our minds are constantly saturated, distracted, or outsourced. And again, the first step is to notice this. And once you do, you can take small but meaningful countermeasures. Read a book. That's my personal go-to for regaining cognitive clarity. So whenever I catch myself jumping from emails to Slack to endless scrolling, I know I've slipped into that mindless autopilot again. And that's my cue to pause and give my brain the opportunity to just follow one structure. Or if you find yourself using AI tools constantly, try writing something from scratch, just to remind yourself that you still can.
Thank you so much for that and for this beautiful view. And unfortunately, there is a lot of trends on social medias around, harmful content that actually push engagements. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
So you founded Digital Peace a few months ago. What gap were you trying to fill in the ecosystem? And what's the biggest lesson you've learned so far about communicating complexity in this space?
Yeah. The gap we're identifying in the ecosystem is less about the technology itself and more about how society relates to it. So there are many civil society organizations doing important work, whether that's making tech more ethical or using it for peace building and other social purposes. But we want to flip the coin by asking, how is technology impacting us? How is it changing our social structure, our emotional lives, and ultimately our capacity for peace, democracy, and social cohesion? So at Digital Peace, our focus is building societal capacity, helping people understand, navigate, and respond to the complex ways in which tech is shaping our world. As for the biggest lesson in communicating complexity, honestly, it's tough. The internet is full of noise and cutting through isn't easy. And also algorithms rarely reward nuance. But something I've been realizing is that there is a real momentum for change right now and a huge potential for movement building. Gen Z, for instance, is the most critical generation toward AI, multiple studies have shown. And there's so much awareness, curiosity, and untapped energy out there. So I would say the real lesson is people are ready for these conversations. We just need to meet them where they are and then invite them to dive deeper.
I love what you say.
Thank you.
Alissa, from your perspective, working with NGOs and democratic institutions, what are the most underestimated risks of AI adoption when it comes to public trust or societal cohesion?
Well, that's a difficult question because we often talk about AI as if it was a single entity. And in reality, we are referring to a wide range of technologies from predictive policing to large language models, automated welfare systems, facial recognition, you name them. And each of these come with its own ethical, social, and political challenges. That said, if I were to define my top 3 concerns when it comes to AI adoption and its impact on public trust, they would be the following. First, as I've already mentioned, the erosion of critical thinking skills. As we rely more on AI to summarize, suggest, or decide, we may slowly lose the habit of sitting with complexity or even questioning the outputs we're giving. And this becomes especially problematic when we consider issues of accountability. Who is responsible for decisions shaped by algorithms? And on top of that, AI outcomes can be manipulated. Just last week, I attended a conference where we discussed exactly this, the increasing efforts by malicious groups to manipulate AI systems or influence the data these systems rely on. And in this sense, it's deeply ironic. AI is quietly weakening our habits of critical inquiry right at the moment in history when digital manipulation and complexity demand those skills more than ever. The second concern is quite popular. It's the structural transformation of the labor market. AI is already reshaping job profiles. Many tasks are increasingly being automated, especially in junior positions. So the transition is already taking place, but we still lack accompanying frameworks to manage it. And this transition period comes at an already challenging time economically for the majority of people who are still dealing with inflation and an economic crisis, and politically as we're witnessing a serious decline in democratic stability. And the third one is specific to the peace building fields where the risks are particularly sensitive. The Peace Research Institute in Oslo warned in a 2022 paper about the growing fetishization of digital solutions, where apps, dashboards, or platforms are presented as breakthroughs, even when they bypass the local voices and social processes that sustainable peace depends on. And the result is a kind of tech-driven exclusion, tools that appear innovative but fail to empower and sometimes even silence the voices and experts on the ground.
Yeah, that's so insightful what you say, and it also makes me think of the fact that, our future of work team literally on how do we approach training for the next coming generation of workers if we don't
Absolutely.
have executional tasks to assign to them anymore, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's
Okay.
a big task and we're not on it.
No, I mean, there
Yeah, we are.
we are working on, but that's the reason why basically we collaborating with Epitech. We're gonna get inspired by them in terms of reverse learning techniques they use, and then translate them into the working place. But yeah. So that kind of like, because we're talking about new generation, so that leads me to the next question, but more towards children. So you worked on both child protection and democratic resilience, right? How can we better integrate human rights principles like dignity, participation, and protection into AI policy design and implementation?
Well, I'll be brief here. For me, the key to integrating human rights principles and like dignity, participation, and protection into AI policy comes down to one word: inclusion. So Mark Zuckerberg recently said we need more masculine energy in tech leadership, but honestly, I believe the very opposite is true. What we need is diverse representation, not just in terms of gender, but across race, class, geography, and lived experience. And that's not to say that men or white men are incapable of designing ethical systems. No, but we all carry our blind spots and biases. And if the majority of those shaping AI come from the same demographic or worldview, we risk building systems that reflect and reproduce only their perspectives while excluding everyone else's.
So that leads us to the situation where AI is exacerbating, like not emphasizing discrimination, basically.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. And there's already a legacy of discrimination in AI systems. And I think like the current announcement of the US government, for example, to eliminate biases within AI, research shows this is almost impossible. I've been talking to a lot of developers that will always emphasize we will never be capable of completely eliminating the bias in AI.
Mm.
It's the way we treat it.
Yeah, but for sure there is best practices we can implement to minimize it.
Absolutely, 100% agree, and we've been progressing on that a lot.
So if you had the attention of a corporate boardroom for just 2 minutes, what would you tell them about their responsibility in shaping digital peace beyond compliance and PR efforts?
Thank you for this question. I love it. I would certainly like to stress that building technology is no longer just a tech business, but society shaping work. And right now, I'm not convinced we're shaping our societies for the better. Just look at the impact we're already seeing. Social media platforms have contributed to a rise in digital violence, growing mental health issues, especially among young people, and increasing polarization and fragmentation in our societies. And the great AI for good promise still waits to be fulfilled. There's a lot of investment in productivity, optimization, and profit, but much less in public value and well-being or social cohesion, even though there are very promising ideas and initiatives out there. And let me be clear, I'm not anti-tech, but I'm pro-democracy, I'm pro-peace, I'm pro-better futures, and I genuinely believe those are possible, but only if we shift the logic. So right now, I feel like we're stuck in a mindset of competition and speed, pushing products out before we've finished thinking through their safety, their long-term impact, or their ethical grounding. But in the race to innovate, if what we create erodes trust, deepens division, or undermines human dignity, then it's not innovation, it's regression. So what I would really like to encourage, not only in corporations, but also in politics, is a shift toward more strategic and long-term thinking. Less focus on short-term profit gains and more integration of potential social costs and meaningful investment in long-term societal benefit.
Thank you so much for that.
So, Marianne, you often say that technology alone is no longer enough. What's missing today in how companies approach AI?
What's missing is basically structure. Um, Today, many companies dive into AI projects without fully understanding what they are putting in place, right? And there is a lot of talk about performance and scalability, but much less about governance, explainability, or responsibility. And there is a kind of a gray zone around which risks are actually being addressed. Who is accountable for what? How do we evaluate an AI vendor, for example? And within that gray zone lies a major risk, the loss of trust from consumers, but also from employees, investors, and partners. At AI on Us, we believe that compliance shouldn't be seen as a blocker. It should be seen as a strategic lever. The real gap today isn't about access to technology, it's access to practical, decision-ready tools that help leaders understand, assess, and anticipate what's coming.
Yeah, I love that too. Yeah, especially about the issue with the trust. And I feel that we're like a little bit jeopardizing here.
Exactly. And well, that's going to lead us to the next question. But, trust is basically the foundation of any commercial relationship, right?
Activity, right?
When there is no trust, people
Yeah.
stop purchasing brands.
Yes, exactly. And we're seeing this already. People are becoming more and more skeptical about AI and its implementation. And that's not the kind of circumstances that we would like, right?
Exactly.
We often hear that AI ethics and business performance don't go hand in hand. Is that really the case?
Well, actually, it's the opposite. Companies that invest in structured, ethical AI practices, responsible AI practices, see very tangible results. According to the Return on Investment of AI Ethics report that was published in June 2025 by the Digital Economist, integrating AI ethics from the design stage leads to, on average, 20% of productivity, a reduction of 35% of legal disputes, and a reduction of 40% of unexpected compliance costs. Why? Because the structure is solid from day one. Data governance, documentation, internal workflows, bias anticipation. It's all aligned. And today, regulation isn't about slowing down. It's about resilience, credibility, and long-term competitiveness. Responsible AI isn't a moral add-on. It's a foundation for sustainable performance. And the companies that grasp this early will become tomorrow's leaders.
That's so interesting insight. Thank you so much. So, how does the AI on our summit help decision makers turn regulation into a strategic advantage?
We built AI-ness as a space for real-world action, not just another tech event. Participants access 9 hours of executive briefings and, most importantly, a responsible AI playbook. We also offer participants to sign the Arborus Charter, which is the first ethical AI charter worldwide that was supported by the President Emmanuel Macron during the AI Action Summit in Paris and presented as one of the 2 flagships of the AI Action Summits. And this summit is beyond everything. We have 10 working groups, right? So it's the result of 6 months of deep preparation with 10 international experts working groups across multiple sectors. And again, you said it before, diversity, multi-stakeholder approach is key, right? We cultivate this. Our teams are spread across 10 different countries from the US and Europe because we're tackling primarily the tier 1 market, but not only. We also have cross-generational panel. So what leaders come for is clarity, the ability to turn obligation into operational strategies. We don't just talk about compliance. We talk about brand differentiation, tech choices that reflect your values, and market resilience. That's what it means to turn regulation into performance. And that's the experience that we deliver at AI UNES.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Marianne. That wraps up our deep dive into digital peace, AI governance, and the power of cross-sector collaboration.
Well, thank you to you, Alissa. Thank you for joining me today and sharing your powerful insight on civic resilience and democratic integrity in the digital age. And thank you to all of our listeners. Don't hesitate to follow Digital Peace to stay connected with Alissa's important work at the intersection of peace building and tech ethics. And if you found values in today's episode, be sure to subscribe to AI Honest channel on YouTube and LinkedIn. And feel free to share this with your team or networks. See you next time.
See you next time.